Hello, friends and listeners. Welcome to Truth, Lies, and Alibis, the true crime podcast from three friends sharing their perspectives from having years of 911 dispatch experience.
Episode 31.
Halloween Homicide.
In today's episode, Jess and I discuss the 2004 Halloween murders of Adriane Insogna and Leslie Mazzara. It's spooky season, Jess.
It's spooky season. It's so spoopy.
Are you excited for Halloween?
Yeah. I'm not big on Halloween. This year I'm going trick-or-treating with you and the kids, so that'll be fun. But...
And then you may never want to go again. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's the thing. They're not my kids at any point in time. I'm done. I can just leave.
You could just be like, hey, I gotta go.
I'm an old lady and I have to work in the morning. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye. It's okay. We usually only go for like an hour or two because by then I've had too much of my own children. So I was scheduled to work like 4 hours in dispatch on Halloween, but then somebody got signed off on a radio, so they don't need me anymore, which I'm slightly okay with. But I'm also kind of sad because I was going to wear my costume to work. Speaking of dispatch, my question today is, have you ever worked dispatch on a Halloween night? And has anything spooky happened?
I probably worked every Halloween.
Yeah, because we never get holidays off.
Well, that, and then I feel like if you don't have kids, that people expect you to work Halloween because
that's not
people
fair.
with kids want to take their kids trick-or-treating.
I mean, I get that because I'm a person with kids, but at the same time, I probably have worked at least 90% of Halloweens.
Yeah. I'm not saying every parent feels that way, but I think a lot do. That if you don't have kids, and that's across the board for not just Halloween. If you don't have...
No, it's for all holidays.
But I worked a lot of Halloweens. Spooky things that happen. There was one year where we had... It was the same year that it hit across the nation of people just, like, right around the time that it was coming out. And people were dressed up as clowns and just, like, standing places and showing up.
Hard pass.
I worked that year, and then, I've mentioned this before, but it wasn't on Halloween, but somebody called in somebody's Halloween decoration because they're like, somebody's asking for help, but it was a Halloween decoration sign. Honestly, working on Halloween is not as much spooky as it is funny, because you get to dispatch calls of, like, a male subject last seen wearing a wizard hat walking down the road. Like, you get to do stuff like that, and that you don't get to do that every day, I guess, depending on where you work. But
that would be funny if you did that every day.
Yeah. But it's like, the subject you're looking for is a skeleton, or, you get to do goofy things like that because that skeleton's going to the bar and getting drunk and causing a mess.
I was going to say it's more drunken madness than it is spookiness.
Yeah.
From what I remember. Because before I worked at the highway patrol during Halloween and stuff, so, like, we didn't get a lot of calls. The one call I got, I think I told you about, just like you, it was a decoration and somebody thought someone was dead in a car. And it turned out to be a Halloween decoration. Or, like, someone thought someone was dead on the side of the road because there was, like, a foot in the road and it was a Halloween decoration that fell off someone's car. So...
Yeah.
But then, I don't know, the 2 years that I actually worked in dispatch, for the agency we both worked at, it was mostly drunken idiots. Like, no offense, but...
It's drunken idiots dressed up as things. It's so funny.
Yeah.
You're looking for a nurse in a very short skirt, like...
Brittany, is that you? I'm just kidding. Anyway, we'll talk about today's story now, because leading into today's story, my story is a Halloween story. Today's sources include Forensic Files. Shout out to my favorite bedtime music, Forensic Files, because that's what I listen to every night when I go to sleep. New York Times, Dateline, and the Forensic Files Now website. So, our story begins on Halloween night in 2004 in Napa, California. Napa, California is the largest city and county seat of Napa County and is a principal city in the wine country of Northern California. Have you ever been to Napa?
I've driven through it.
It's pretty. I've only driven through it too.
Yeah.
On this night, 3 roommates went to sleep. Adriane Insogna, I think that's how you say it, Leslie Mazzara, and Lauren Manza. I probably am saying these names so wrong. Even though I listened to them and I tried. In the early morning hours of November 1st, so it was like Halloween night into November 1st, Lauren would be the only roommate alive. She would wake up to a scream coming from upstairs. She then saw a male subject run down the stairs and out of the house. However, it was too dark to get a good description on the subject, and luckily he didn't see her, so he left her alive not knowing she was there, I think. Lauren went upstairs to check on her roommates, and that's where she found Leslie dead and Adriane barely alive. She then fled the house to a neighbor and called 911. And when investigators got there, both of the women were deceased. So they were obviously too far gone. Lauren and Adriane lived in the home first, and then Lauren, who was 27 at the time, was a volleyball coach, and she was very athletic. And then Adriane was 26 at the time. She was an engineer. She was also athletic. Her friends described her as a great person. They also described her as tough and an overcomer. In fact, in high school, Adriane was in a nearly fatal car accident that left her with physical and emotional scars that she had overcome. Leslie was a one-time beauty queen who was once Miss South Carolina. Her friends described her as beautiful and bubbly. When she was little, she wanted to be Miss America, a teacher, a nurse, and a mother. I think she worked for like a winery in the area at the time. What people said could never happen here happened here, Napa Police Chief Richard Melton said to the media later. In the house, investigators would find a pack of zip ties mixed in with the blood from the victims. Investigators also found a male subject's blood, and with the evidence they had, investigators determined that the attacker must have cut his hand while stabbing the victims, and when he ran out of the house, he touched the wall with his bloody hands, leaving the women's blood as well as his own behind. So, at least they had DNA evidence, right? They did find, like, the zip ties, it seemed like they fell out of his pocket when he was climbing in the window.
He didn't have them with him when he was attacking them.
Yeah, so it seems like he brought them, so he kind of had a plan, right? But he dropped them, and then things kind of got a little bit crazy. From the DNA left at the scene, investigators were able to determine that the suspect was most likely right-handed from the bloody handprint left behind, which I don't know how, but it's not my job, so. They were also able to determine that the killer was primarily Northwestern European ancestry, had blue or green eyes, and most likely had light-colored hair. This information would be released to the public in the hopes that new leads would come in to help further the investigation. So after they got all this, they kind of made a composite sketch, and then they showed it on the news and kind of gave a description of what he would look like and everything. Mm-hmm. Investigators also found cigarette butts near the house. They determined that the cigarettes were a brand called Camel Turkish Gold. This particular brand was new and hadn't been sold that often in the area, so investigators asked Lauren, the only survivor of the house, to provide a list of friends and acquaintances of the 3 that had smoked. They were really trying to look into any lead that they could find.
They thought it was somebody that they knew.
They definitely thought it was somebody that they knew. Because from the evidence, it seemed like he came in and went straight for the girls' rooms. Yeah. The investigation took 11 months, and there were 1,300 interviews and 218 DNA samples that were taken. Can you imagine that? 218 DNA samples. Also, like, the processing time on that, it would take forever, you know?
Yeah.
Friends of Adriane and Leslie would question why this had happened. Police would tell the family and friends that they didn't think that the crime was random and the suspect had to have been someone the 2 girls knew, like I said before.
Yeah.
So a bunch of different rumors would circulate. They looked into Leslie's past boyfriends, including an ex who had bought her a car and made a tribute page to her after they broke up.
Okay.
Kind of creepy, right? Not even kind of
creepy.
Super creepy.
No, thank you.
Oh, you broke up with me? Okay, I think I'm gonna make a webpage all about you.
If I show you how much I love you through the internet, you'll come back to me, right?
That's not creepy. They also looked into another ex's father that was described as obsessed with Leslie, and he had even called Leslie on Halloween night. So she was dating some guy, and the dad was like inappropriate with her and would call her all the time. And even after they broke up, he would call her all the time. And apparently he called her on Halloween night.
The night of the attack.
Yeah. So they looked into him. The DNA samples didn't match any of the suspects' DNA, and they also collected DNA from the men she was dating at the time in the Napa area, but it didn't match any of them either. They also looked into Adriane's personal life, including her boyfriend Christian. They had an on-again, off-again relationship, and friends would tell investigators that they could only see the bad in Christian because he made her cry so often. So basically, they didn't like when they were together. They took his clothes, his sheets, samples of his blood, and questioned him. According to friends, he and Adriane had been arguing for weeks prior to the murder, which is why a lot of people suspected that he might be involved. Adriane and Leslie's mothers were so distraught and frustrated and really just wanted to know why this horrible crime had happened. And Lauren would even be interviewed by America's Most Wanted. She went on the show to try and get the story out there, and they kind of like blacked out her face because she didn't want to be seen. So, back to the investigation. When the investigators had asked Lauren if any of their friends that they knew or acquaintances smoked cigarettes, she would tell investigators that a friend of theirs named Eric Matthew Koppel was the only person she could think of that smoked that specific brand of cigarettes. She wasn't very familiar with him, but he had helped the girls move into the home previously. Before police could go to him, he turned himself in and confessed to the murders. He had seen the media coverage of the DNA evidence and knew that it was only a matter of time before the investigation led to him because the description matched him so well. Koppel would tell investigators that he blamed one of the victims, Adriane, for his breakup with his then ex-fiancée, Lily. Many people had told Lily not to marry Koppel, and Adriane was one of those friends. In fact, when they canceled the wedding, Adriane and Lily started planning a trip to Australia together. Obviously without him, because...
Hey, I mean, good advice, honestly. He killed 2 people. You probably shouldn't marry him.
Probably not, but... So, it seemed like, according to some friends, Eric and Lily were very different from one another, and Eric kind of kept to himself and was kind of seen as a little bit creepy and weird. And Lily was, like, outgoing and kind, and people were like, why are you with him? Obviously, there was some deeper issues in the relationship if one of her best friends is like, bro... You know? On Halloween night, Koppel went to a party where he had seen his ex-fiancée Lily, and when he attempted to talk to her and set a new date for their wedding, like a psychopath, Lily turned him down and asked him to leave her alone. She wasn't interested in patching things up at the time. So she was basically like, no, you're crazy, which...
We're done.
Yeah. No, I don't want to set another date for our wedding that I don't want to have.
It wasn't even a scheduling issue. It was a marriage issue.
Can you imagine? She's like, no, I just don't want to marry you ever. Not that I don't want to marry you.
On a specific day.
Yeah. I just don't ever want to marry you. Like, I don't ever want to be your wife. So, Eric left the party that night, drunk and angry, and decided that Adriane was to blame for his breakup. Why he blamed her more than anyone when it sounded like multiple people were telling Lily to leave the creepy weirdo who wouldn't take no for an answer. I don't know. But he decided then that he was going to go to her home and waited long enough to smoke his cigarettes and then entered the women's house. So he was like standing there watching the house smoking.
Like waiting for them to go to sleep or something?
Or trying to work up their courage to do what he was planning on doing. Who knows? It seems weird that if he was watching the house for that long, he didn't know that
the third girl was there.
Yeah. So he broke into the women's home through a window, and while breaking in, he dropped his zip ties. On these zip ties, investigators would find Eric's DNA. On the cigarette butts found outside, investigators would also find his saliva. He would kill Leslie first, before entering Adriane's room to kill her. Adriane fought for her life, and at one point she cut his hand. When leaving the house, this would ensure his blood was left behind at the crime scene. Both of the women were brutally stabbed to death, but it doesn't look like there was any other kind of motive, that he literally just went in to kill them. Which, there doesn't need to be any other motive. So that's why I'm saying it looks like, I think that's why investigators thought they for sure had to know who it was, because it looked like he went in just to do that. Investigators believe that couple either didn't know about the third bedroom or just didn't know that Lauren lived with the 2 victims, which is why she was able to make it out of the house alive and run to a neighbor's house to call 911. Some would speculate that the friendship between Lily and Adriane had made Eric angry and jealous, and Eric would tell investigators he was depressed and suicidal at the time, and the defense would try to use this in their favor, saying that he was not in a correct mental state at the time of the murders. The next day, Lily, this is where things get real weird. I mean, it's already weird, right? It's already a little bit much. He's obviously has some issues. We always say that.
Yeah, he needs to get over his masculine pride. People are
dumb.
Make me angry.
I wish you guys could see Jessica's face. She's just like rubbing her eyes like she's like, what is wrong with this person?
It's exhausting. It's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
I get, we've talked on it plenty of times, right? Everybody knows we understand mental health, right? That shit happens. But also, your failed relationship is not...
It's not anyone's fault but your own and the other person.
But your own.
Like, yeah. Together, you two just didn't work out. And that doesn't mean you go around killing people or blaming them.
It's not the best friend's fault. Like, she's doing her best friend job of being like, hey, turns out also she was right. Like,
100% right. Yeah.
But like, let's look at the situation as a whole and be like, hey, that one friend that told you that we shouldn't get married, she's dead now, so we can get married, right?
Well, just hold on, Jessica. Hold on. Because us rational people don't understand irrational people, right? We could talk about this for, I don't know how long, hours, and we still would never understand why he was like, hey, this girl doesn't want me, so I'm going to kill this other girl, right? Well... This is where things get interesting. Remember when you said, hey, I killed this girl, we can get married?
Yeah. I'm already so tired, Brittany. I'm already exhausted. This situation is just too much for me. And this isn't even like the worst thing we've talked about. This is just so ridiculous that it's like, okay.
It's like a really bad soap opera.
It's like a really bad writing. It's like
a book club book that you would just be like, I hate this book. It's so dumb.
Yeah, actually, that's exactly what this is. This is a badly written book club book, but it's real, which is worse.
I'm telling you, the writing just gets worse. Here we go. The next day, Lily would call Koppel and tell him about Adriane's murder. So I am confused because the stuff I read and like watching Forensic Files, it made it sound like they weren't together and she was like, no, I don't want to marry you ever. But she called him, right?
Well, I guess like that's not super far stretch for me to see. Like if your circle is before they broke up, if your circle is your fiance and your best friend, and your best friend's now gone. Mm-hmm. Like, she's used to turning to him. So I can understand calling and being like, I need that relationship that we had. Like, I just need to talk to somebody because that one other person I had is gone.
I could get that, I guess. But
I know that's not where this ends, so go ahead with it.
Are you ready for this love story? He would console her, and then the two would get back together and even got married.
Oh no. Wow, well, I guess his plan worked.
Koppel went to the funerals of his victims, and Adriane's mother was at Eric and Lily's wedding.
Wow, that's so sick.
Yeah, it gets worse. I don't know how it could get any worse, but it just keeps getting worse and worse. I remember watching this when I first saw this story many, many moons ago, and I was like, I'm sorry, what? Because like you, I was like, this is insane. And also, how did he live with himself? Like, he had to have some kind of level of like, I don't know, but like, how do you sleep? How do you pretend to take care of this woman who's probably mourning her best friend? Because like, if my best friend died, I would just be like a mess, right? But maybe that worked in his favor because he was like, oh, I'm here for you. And then she's like, oh, he's the only one who's here for me. And then they got married. The two had asked Adriane's mother to be a part of the wedding. She had taken Adriane's sister as her +1, and in a quote from New York Times, Adriane's mother said, I totally assumed it would be someone I did not know. My first thoughts were, oh my God, Lily, and my burning question is why? What is it that makes someone feel that whatever conflict there is, that the solution is to take a life? That is my big question. Kind of like what we just said. Mm-hmm. She was at the wedding and like said a prayer and was like part of it.
Yeah, how do you sleep at night? How do you live with yourself? You're living this massive lie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And your friends probably, like, Lily would talk to Dateline. She was like, whoever did this should die. Like, they need to catch him. Like, all this stuff, right? He was there during the interviews. And, like, there was, like, the America's Most Wanted that they did. How did he sit there? Part of me wants to know, like, how did she not know? But then I know well enough not to ask that because, you know, people like that, nobody knows who they really are. So I could see her not knowing, but I also, knowing the kind of cigarettes he smoked, knowing how they felt about each other, it's obvious that they didn't like each other. I don't know. I think I'd be a little suspicious, but I'm suspicious of everything. So, like, I know it's probably not healthy on my level, but I'd be like, that's suspicious.
Well, what's the timeline? So
they got back together the next day after the girls were murdered.
And then how soon did they get, like, and then they get married, and then the DNA, then he turns himself in. Like,
Well, it was a total of 11 months before he turned himself in. So within those 11 months, they got back together, they got married, and then he turned himself in because obviously we all know DNA takes way too long to be processed because of the backup, because there's so many DNA profiles that they have to go through, because of the workers they have, blah, 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 all that stuff, right? So it probably took a while before they could get that information about his DNA, and then they aired it on the news, and then that's when he turned himself in. Because he
already had
saw
a
it on the
composite
news.
sketch by then, right? Like,
yes,
do you ever think she was watching the news, sitting next to her husband, and being like, huh.
I think that's why he turned himself in, partially too. Probably because he didn't want his wife to be like,
wait a minute.
that looks like you.
I think there has to be some level of denial there, though.
I think that's what I'm saying. How do you not know? How do you not know? Because, I don't know, I guess not. He probably didn't act suspicious. He probably is just weird as fuck the whole time. So she was just like, oh, he's just a weirdo. He's just acting like
he is.
His normal weird self. I don't know, though, because with what I'm going to tell you next, I feel like maybe she knew, or maybe she suspected, or something. Lily would claim she never suspected Eric was the murderer. In fact, at trial, she even spoke about him as having a gentle side. She would tell Dateline that the two had first planned to marry November 1st, the day after Halloween. That night into that day is when he committed the murders. If they had gone through with their wedding, Leslie and Adriane would have gone to Hawaii with the couple, and they still would have been alive. So they had planned to all go to Hawaii after the wedding, or for the wedding, it seems like. Koppel was charged with 2 counts of homicide, as well as 2 special circumstances, multiple murders, and lying in wait that could have made him eligible for the death penalty. However, he accepted a plea deal in order to avoid the death penalty, and he will spend the rest of his life in prison. Koppel would say in court, "I cannot fathom an explanation for my sinful deeds. The terrible agony inflicted upon a great number of people, my relationship with Lily was in jeopardy and crashing. It was all like it fertilized the seed of anger in my heart. There was rage inside of me. If I had only listened to those who pleaded with me to get the help I needed." So again, he's trying to blame the end of his relationship and then his mental state for it. But I'm like, no, sir, that's not how that works.
Yeah, and I feel bad for the girl because it's like very clear that there's, like we've mentioned before, domestic violence has a lot of different definitions. And the fact that her best friend, and you even said before, like multiple friends were like, this guy's not good for you. And then after finding this out, she's like, but he has a kind and gentle soul. Like,
and I feel like your friends don't usually say that to you unless like they really,
there's a reason.
Yeah, unless there's a reason behind it. I'm trying to find her speech because literally I watched her speak at the trial and she was like saying, oh, this is what got me. This is what makes it even worse, right? After she finds out her husband killed her best friend, she gets up at the trial to speak for him and she says, "There's nothing you could do that would make me love you less." So
yeah, that's not healthy.
She is basically saying, like, even though you killed my best friend, I still love you. And it doesn't make me love you any less. And I'm like, I mean, I feel like, so when you're in a relationship, right, you're like, sometimes you are like, oh, that's a red flag, but I love them, so, like, you ignore it, right? So I feel like she probably did a lot of that But when it gets to the point where he kills people, don't you feel like you'd be like, oh, look, I see all these red flags. Maybe I should run.
I don't understand. There's plenty we don't understand, right? But I don't understand that you're okay with loving this man that killed 2 people, one of which was your best friend?
Yep.
Because he was mad that you guys weren't together anymore? Like, that's
kind of
out
scary.
Of this world.
Yeah. It's just like, how does she rationalize that in her brain?
I don't know.
Like, oh, he loved me so much that he killed these people. He's also creepy looking. He looks like he doesn't interact with people very often. Oh, and then
I don't know.
He tried to cry. Like, he, like, was trying to cry at his... Like, maybe he did cry. But I think that when I was watching him, I think he was crying because he got caught and because he wasn't going to be with Lily anymore and Lily would know who he was. Not because he felt bad. He just looks... Well, when you watch... I mean, the picture doesn't look bad. But when you watch him on the Forensic Files, he looks like he doesn't have a lot of interaction with other people.
I am hesitant to comment on things like that because, especially, like, weird is subjective, creepy is subjective.
Maybe I just think he's weird and creepy because I know what he did.
Because he killed people?
Yeah,
that's valid. That's valid, but...
Like, if I saw him before, I'd probably just be like, oh, he just looks like a normal guy. But because I know, and because of his faces while he was listening to the trial and stuff, that's what makes him creepy. That's what I'm trying to say.
That, I feel like, is valid.
Like, I'm not trying to blame her at all. Because it's not her fault, right? It's 100% his fault. He is the one who decided that because of his failed relationship, he was going to murder her friend. However, I am saying it is a little bit weird that she, after knowing what he did, stood up there and said all those things.
Yeah.
Only knowing...
very much... Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, it's just very much clear that, like, she's the victim of domestic violence. That, like... She's
Shocking,
been manipulated
at least.
so much to, like, I don't know, to have this, like, sick need for him that...
They just had a toxic relationship, probably.
Yeah, that it was like you said, right? Like, he loved me so much, he killed 2 people because they got in the way. I don't know.
I just don't know how you rationalize that. Like, so, not only... I just am struggling. I'm really struggling. Let me talk this through with you.
Yeah.
Not only did he kill them, he then proceeded to let one of the girl's moms, who he murdered, speak at his wedding and pray over his marriage. And then, like, just continued on. And obviously, like, just laid next to his wife every night in bed. Who knows how many nights she went to bed crying over her friend. Like, I feel like that's something that you wouldn't get over quickly. And then the mom, who was in the wedding... would go on to say, like, how she didn't think it would be him or, like, it didn't think it would be anyone they knew because her daughter was so kind. She also would say that Lily and her had grown close since the murders. Like, they had formed a friendship since the murders. And then when she heard her go up and speak, in the interview I saw, she was like, I don't know how we get past this. I hope we can, but I don't know how we get past this.
I'm the type of person that, like, and this is me personally, right? Like, I'm the type of person that, given this scenario, right? If my daughter was murdered and then I was brought into this family and became a friend with that knew my daughter, all this kind of stuff, I find out that the husband was the murderer and that the best friend is standing up for him. I don't need you in my life. There's nothing to get over. It's done.
Yeah.
Like, period.
And I'm sorry, but this business of forgiveness, I don't get it. Like, it's cool if that's what helps you get through things.
Right.
But there are some things that you just cannot forgive. It makes me really angry, right? Because I grew up in, like, a religious background and had all these religious friends and all these people who are like, oh, you should forgive them because it's only hurting you. No, it's really not hurting me. Do you know what hurt me? Is the thing they did that you think that I should give them forgiveness for. That's what hurts me. Me being mad at them when I, like, occasionally think of them, or me protecting myself and not wanting them back in my life is not hurting me. Also, what hurts me is when you tell me to forgive them, because then I just want to punch you in the face. Okay?
I will stand on this hill with you all day long.
I will die on this hill.
It's true, and that's the thing that we've been taught, that like how we feel is less important than how the people we are around feel.
Yeah.
And
that's nonsense.
It's okay to not be somebody's friend anymore. You don't have to feel bad. You don't have to change yourself because somebody else has changed.
Exactly. People change all the time. People grow apart. People grow together. People meet new people. Like, even in this relationship that they were in, like, she shouldn't have felt bad for leaving him.
Like, that's your own life, right? Like, you don't have to care if I approve of your life or not, because guess what? I'm not living it.
Yeah.
You are. So if anybody needs to be approving of your life, it's you. So if you're doing something you don't want to do, you only get one shot at it. So maybe not do that.
You only have so many good years, okay? Then your hair turns gray and your hip goes out and you're sitting on the couch watching.
In front of me.
I was talking about like older, much, much older. Like my grandma's age.
You've seen my
where
roots.
She I don't even know. I probably have lots of gray hairs. I just cover up those roots before I can even see them. Because I don't want to know. I don't want to know how old my soul really is, okay? I'm talking about my grandma's age where you have to have a knee replacement and then you're just sitting on the couch watching Dr. Phil all day, okay? Sorry, Grandma. I love you so much. But I'm just saying, I'm only a couple of years from there, Jess, okay?
No, you're not. You're so full of it. Only a couple years away from Grandma. I was out to eat a few mornings ago, and the waitress, she was so soft-spoken, and it was like a restaurant, right? So it's already kind of noisy, and most people don't know, but I have moderate hearing loss in my left ear, and I was sitting, so she was on my left side. And she came to say so. I had to ask her to repeat it, and she left. And I looked across the table, and I was like, "I'm the grandma. She's got to speak up for Grandma. I can't hear her." I'm just a grandma.
You are not a grandma.
Neither are you.
Oh, I feel like it sometimes. Anyway, all that to say,
I don't know how we got all the way there. What were we talking about?
All that to say, you only have so many good years, and don't waste it on the creepy weirdo who none of your friends like.
Here's the thing.
Cry
if you're in
every day.
a relationship where you're sad more often than you're happy, maybe consider not being in that relationship. You don't have to be in a relationship at all.
You don't, actually.
Thank you for listening. Additional information for each case can be found on our website, truthliesandalibis.buzzsprout.com. New episodes will be uploaded every Monday. Find us on Facebook and Instagram at Truth Lies and Alibis.